Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jude, this is Jonathan. This is our third video in how we stream at Southwest Baptist Church. Because of the unique times that our country's in with the COVID-19 virus, and most of our churches are going to be doing some sort of streaming service, we thought it'd be helpful to show you what we do here in Oklahoma City. This is our sound and video advice on how do we stream a service. We are just wrapping up our first 100% live stream service. Have about 467 devices right now are currently watching this service, and we're about 3 to 5 minutes away from being over. So this video we're going to talk about how do we get the video and audio to be time aligned, how do we send it out, and then maybe some of the things that we've learned through this first service of 100% streaming. How do we get the audio and video to sync up?
In our situation, we're using Livestream.com, which is our streaming provider. It's a paid service, and with that we get their proprietary software that we have installed on a Windows machine. It works on both Windows and Mac, so if you have a preference there, you have those options. Basically, it lets us take different video inputs and audio inputs, and it will take those and mix them together. So it's kind of a software video switcher mixer hybrid software. There's other softwares out there similar to that, such as vMix, OBS, or Open Broadcaster Studio, I believe is what that stands for. So we're using software to sync everything together. So the main reason I'm doing that is because we're using a Dante network. We have a Dante adapter plugged into the streaming PC, and so that comes straight from the digital Dante signal and goes digital into the computer, so we're not doing any kind of analog, digital to analog and then back to digital conversion.
So we're doing Dante from house to here, audio, and then we're doing Dante output to the streaming computer input.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. What we're doing on the recording decks is slightly different. Those actually have analog inputs, and so our live stream mix, we have some different matrix outputs on that. I think we touched a little bit on the compression and different things, so we're using those to have different compression levels for the different recorders. So like our main recorder is basically uncompressed, so we have the most flexibility in post to work with. Then our archive recorder is getting a little more compressed because we don't use that one unless for archival purposes to review anything or have a backup recording.
So he just stopped our first service live streaming 100% streamed, and it just showed 474 devices watching it right now.
Since our stream just finished, I don't typically do this right after our streams, but it's not a bad time to. I'm going to go ahead and trim the beginning of it to cut out any pre-roll of the stream, just so people, if they go back into the DVR mode, they're able to not have to skip through all that intro stuff. We have a countdown for this specific one, but typically it would just be our prelude music that's playing.
While he's taking care of that, I just wanted to talk about, again, the importance of getting good audio with your video setup. Some people have a mindset of, we're just going to use a microphone that's on the camera, and if that's all you can do right now, that's going to be perfect. But if you have the ability or the means to do a better audio feed into your streaming service or your computer, look at doing that. Even if it's simple as you're using your cell phone as your video camera right now, they make adapters that you can interject line level audio into your camera, into your cell phone. Also, if you have a like the camera that we're using here at the church has a couple XLRs on it. Those are mic level or line level input to that camera, and you can either do it mono or stereo. So you can take a simple mono or stereo analog output of your console. If you're doing digital audio, it doesn't matter, and you can feed the audio input to the camera itself. And at that point, you can modulate the audio and video together and then stream it as one package from there. So there's a couple different ways, but I really would encourage you to figure out how to get really good audio into your live stream. It's going to be a big difference to making people feel like, hey, this is a church service on my phone or at home. Our church went through a renovation a couple years ago, and one of the things that we worked really hard on was making sure all the streamed locations would have really good audio along with the video. We had 400 people in our gym, and that's actually where our live service was. And then we streamed to 2 to 3 different rooms at times in different parts of the church. We actually set up portable sound systems in those rooms to have better audio. That way, even though you're removed from the actual live service, you can still feel like you're having church, and that's important to me. But again, I'm a sound guy, so I'm biased towards really good audio. So we just talked about getting audio into the streaming computer. How do we get the video into the streaming computer from the cameras?
So there's different brands out there. For budget reasons and reliability, I really prefer the Blackmagic. I really prefer the Blackmagic stuff all around. I haven't had any bad experiences with them. I know some people probably have, but I haven't had any personally, and nothing that I've read about that didn't seem like it may have been user error. But we have one of the Blackmagic. Let me actually look it up real quick here. So we use the Blackmagic cards. The particular card that we have in our computers is a DeckLink mini recorder. They make a regular model and a 4K model. For most of your needs, just the regular mini recorder probably is going to be fine. There's a couple of reasons you might want to go with the 4K, and it's really not that much more, so it could future-proof you so you're not having to do upgrades. But that gives you an SDI input or an HDMI input into your computer, in which the streaming software can read that and then encode it and then go up to your streaming provider. One reason we're using Windows platforms here for our streaming is mostly because of the lack of options that Apple had at the time. They just recently released a new Mac Pro, which is still pretty far out of our price range, but that would have the capability to accept these PCI cards. If you are going the Mac route and you have an iMac or a MacBook Pro that you're needing an external device, Blackmagic also makes those as well. I recommend them if that's your only option, but if you have the option to go with a dedicated hardware card that's not external, I recommend the internal cards. They're just a little more robust and seem to be a little more reliable.
What type of computer are you using? What's your specs for the computer?
I think we have about 8 gigs of memory, which seems to be plenty. We actually don't even have a dedicated graphics processor for it, or GPU, because a lot of the new CPUs have built-in encoders, which is kind of a big deal when you're streaming, because you don't want to rely on software to encode your stream, because it's going to be very CPU intensive. Most high-end CPUs aren't going to be able to stream with software encoding. So if you have hardware encoding, for instance, we have an Intel i5. It's fairly low spec CPU, but has no issues streaming because it has a dedicated hardware encoder that handles the stream 100%.
What type of internet service are we using at the church? We've just recently switched, so can you explain why we're using what we're using now and why we made the switch?
So we had broadband internet that we were trying to make work. We had a 50 megabit download and a 10 megabit upload which theoretically should have worked for our entire campus, is probably asking a bit much for it. So we did upgrade to faster upload. So we had a 20 megabit upload. And we're still having some issues with it, and it seemed to be an infrastructure issue with just the inherent nature of how broadband's designed. If there's a flaw in the circuit anywhere in that area, it's going to affect all the customers, and your internet may still work, but it's a low quality connection, so you may see some small delays here and there.
When you stream, aren't you streaming in 4 different resolutions?
We do, because that's kind of a thing that Livestream.com does. YouTube, Facebook, they don't do that. So you just have one stream you're sending.
So our streaming service is livestream.com. What are the 4? Is it 4?
Yep. It's 4 resolutions. We have 1080p, 720p, 480p, and 240p, which together, all 4 of those streams use a total of 8 megabits per second of bandwidth when we're uploading. So with our broadband provider, we weren't having good results with it because of the infrastructure. I don't know that it was necessarily the service provider themselves, but it's just their infrastructure was so old here in our neighborhood. We were having issues with it. So we did recently switch to fiber, and that's basically solved all of our problems that we were having. Some benefits of fiber is it's a dedicated connection to your building, so it's not shared by anybody else. So if that gets damaged, only your facility is affected. Whereas the broadband, if that's damaged, the whole area is affected. And so that was a pretty critical thing for us that we were having some issues with, and that solved it. So we have still a 20 megabit upload speed, and it works basically 100% of the time.
Explain why we don't want to use Wi-Fi when we're trying to do any of this streaming.
I mean, theoretically, you could use Wi-Fi to stream. I don't try to use wireless for anything unless I absolutely have to. Especially with us having a lot of devices here during a given service. Even though a lot of our members don't have access to that particular Wi-Fi network, those devices are going to still be searching for Wi-Fi access points, and they're going to add lots of noise to the radio frequencies that are active there. And so really, if you can hardwire anything with just Ethernet cables, you're going to have the best results that way, because there's just a direct connection to your router.
That's the same way with audio too. We have 8 great wireless mics here at the church, but I try not to use them at all because you have to deal with battery issues, connection issues. Wireless is not going to be as reliable as wired. So at all costs, if possible, I try to use a corded mic, and that needs to be the same way with your computers, your cameras, your streaming services. Don't rely on Wi-Fi. One of the things that we try to do professionally is we try to reduce all the potential problems that could be out there. A lot of people will say the devil's in the sound system. There's usually a really reasonable, logical explanation for why things fail. Sometimes it takes a little bit to figure that out. So if we can do some of the guesswork up front and remove some of the potential problems that could happen, we're going to be better because of that. One more question concerning the live stream. Tell us how and why did you give priority to your streaming computer?
Yeah, so basically, we actually still have our broadband connection that we use for our Wi-Fi and our office internet, primarily because of contract reasons. But right now we're just using our fiber dedicated to live streaming, and I'm able to do that still with our single network by doing some special routing in our router, where it sees our streaming computer and says everything that's coming from that I want to send through the fiber connection. So Another thing that you can do if you just have a single connection and you're sharing it with other people, and there's a potential that someone could try to start uploading something the same time you're streaming, because if those two things happen at the same time, they're both fighting for the bandwidth, and one of them's going to win, and so your live stream may suffer because of that. You can use a small router. They call them SOHO, small office, home office.
So
Small office, home office routers. And a lot of those should be able to handle doing what they call bandwidth management, and letting you basically prioritize one device on your network to have 100% of the internet if needed. And then if it's not needed, then it gives priority to the other devices. And so every router is going to be different how you set it up. So there's not really any set rules on how you do that. But most office routers that aren't just your typical home router should have that capability.
Giving priority to your streaming computer is going to be, like I was saying, with audio. If you can remove some of the potential known problems that could happen, you're going to be better off. I know a lot of churches have been streaming a lot longer than our church has, but now, as a nation, probably the majority of our churches, if they're going to have a church service, it's going to be streamed of some format. I know even before the restrictions on capacity, a lot of our churches were encouraging the elderly to stay home. If there was a problem, or if they were at a higher risk of getting sick, stay home, watch the stream. But it's different now. Like for our congregation, 100% of the congregation, if they went to church tonight, they went to church online at the church's website. So it's really important that we do what we can on the front end to remove as many distractions or problems as possible. It's 8:18, so our first 100% live stream service is over. Jonathan, tell us just a couple things that we need to look at differently before we stream next, and why.
So as far as the streaming itself, everything worked 100%, which is a blessing, and praise the Lord for that.
Mm-hmm.
Something we've been praying for, and we know we haven't had a history of issues with it, but stuff can happen, so it's a blessing that God allowed that to all happen 100% there. One of the things that we didn't see being a problem was our web host. So we use Livestream.com, but we embed that player into our web page, which is not hosted by Livestream.com. It's hosted by a different company, and apparently, when 600 people try to open a web page at 7 o'clock all at the same time, it can't handle all those requests. And so we had many people texting me asking, hey, is the website down? Why won't this load? I've been trying to load it. And I think that went on for probably about 10 minutes. And we don't pay a lot for our site. I'm actually going to reach out to them tomorrow and see what some of our options are. I know there's a company out there called Cloudflare that's a kind of an add-on type thing you can add to your web page, which will basically distribute it among servers nationwide and really worldwide. And so people in their areas their computers will request the website from those servers rather than trying to go to a central location where your website's hosted. So that's probably what we'll have to end up doing for that. And that was something that we didn't really see happening. Another thing that probably isn't going to happen for most of your members, but like we have the college campus and we have several students that are there. Heartland's internet speed isn't necessarily slow, but the connection they have only will allow for a certain amount. Just mathematically, it's not possible to have more than a certain amount of users watching a live stream. So if they go over that capacity, it's potentially going to cause buffering for everybody versus just the people that are trying to get on. So if you do have that problem, that's something to consider if you would ever have multiple people trying to stream from a specific location using a single internet connection.
So one final note. Again, our church decided in the best interest of how we were going to stream the service, to pre-record all the services and then play them back. And that decision actually was made probably by 10 o'clock this morning, when I started getting phone calls saying, hey, I was not going to be needed to run the sound because everything was going to be pre-recorded. And the decision came down to there would be less potential distractions or problems if it was pre-recorded and then just played back at the service times. So one of the things that Jonathan did, and explain how he did this, he built in a redundancy. So if our live stream crashed for whatever reason, there's already a backup copy out there that people could go to. So explain real quick how and why and what you did with that.
So yeah, for some reason we had some sort of catastrophic failure with our internet connection. I had actually, because it was pre-recorded, I had actually already uploaded a video to Livestream, similar to how you would post a video to YouTube or Vimeo or any other kind of video hosting platform. And it's just in a draft state. So if something was to fail, I could just post that draft immediately, and then people could watch the stream in that way. So it's not actually coming from our building, but it's already on the live stream servers.
So it's private or it's unlisted, and then all you got to do is send it live, and it replaces the live service.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. This is new for us to be doing the 100% streaming, and hopefully, Lord willing, it will only be just a couple weeks and we'll let this virus pass by. But we also got to be thinking reality too. This may not go as quick as we're hoping. And so we're trying to do our part to build in as much redundancy as we can to put out a really good product that's going to be viewable at the right times. So I'm Jude. This is Jonathan. I hope this has been a help, and I hope this almost creates a little community. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave a comment, and then Jonathan or I will be looking at it, or perhaps you may have some advice that might help us or somebody else. So be sure to leave a comment. This is our sound and video advice. Thank you for watching.